On a mission to facilitate healing at the soul level, to step into our highest purpose and make an impact for future generations, Kelly Cole joins me today from Maryland in the US. I'm Jennifer Regular, the host of Awaken and Ascend, where I get to bring spiritual change makers and healers from all around the world to support you in stepping into a fuller expression of who you are so you can create greater meaning and fulfillment in your life. When you're ready to step into your higher purpose or calling, feeling well and thriving will only help you to make your impact stronger. As today's guest, Kelly, says, the thing left out of much of mainstream wellness is the spirit and connecting to yourself in order to thrive. I cannot wait to get into this discussion with her because it's everything I stand for too. But before I do, let me just share a little bit about her for those who don't know her so well yet. Kelly Cole is a podcast host herself, also a nurse practitioner, business owner, and mom of two. And in her experience, both personal and professional, she's witnessed many examples of spiritual, emotional, physical illness and unbalance. So she works with women to correct this imbalance using her Synergy Thrive method. This method incorporates spirituality into the pillars of wellness, connecting the mind, body, gut, and brain, and spirit to create the highest level outcome for wellness as a woman, and mom, while also setting an example for our children and future generations. Also activating intuition and using a variety of healing modalities to truly thrive and make an impact on the world. Kelly, it is so awesome to have you here. We are soul kin, and it's just wonderful to share this space with you. So welcome.
Thank you. I am honored to be here, and wow, what an introduction.
Thank you. And thanks for all of you that are joining in. And I know we're all excited to hear about your journey and how you're thriving now, but at some point I imagine things weren't so great. And there were probably some challenges that you faced, just as we all do, but that gave you the premise and the onus to be able to step into embodying what it's like to thrive, especially as a mom and as a woman, and create the Synergy Thrive method. So where did that whole inspiration come from to create this, to share with others?
Sure. I think that, it's always a loaded question, like where did it come from specifically? But I think that there's iterations of yourself that you go through, right? So you kind of know, I started back here as a single person who was just starting out as a nurse. And I went through this journey of understanding how much people hold in themselves with physical illness. And then I watched a lot of struggle happen within a hospital setting, within a healthcare setting. And as I matured in that role, I also became married. And then I really wanted to become a mom. And my first venture into this whole mentality was a giant struggle with infertility. And so it really was one of the first places where I found myself just having to completely surrender and give up to the universe and to source and God and say, okay, like whatever you think I'm supposed to do, just lead me there. I'm doing all of these things I think I'm supposed to be doing, and in the end, like of that particular lesson, for me, it was just understanding that I had to let go of some of the ways that I was controlling things. And then you fast forward a bit more, and I'm a mom with 2 kids, and I have a really crazy schedule, and I'm trying to juggle everything, and I don't feel good. I feel like my body hurts. I feel like I'm sluggish and foggy. And at the same time, I'm noticing, again, how so much of it's echoed within my patients, within the patients that I'm seeing. They are also struggling. They're also in pain. They're also having all of this. And what it really ends up being at the end of all of this giant journey, which were a few more steps in the journey, but realizing that it wasn't one thing alone that was going to make it more fruitful for me. It wasn't one thing alone that was going to start to let me walk down a better path. I had to kind of pay attention to different areas in my life, not only focusing on okay, well, I just don't feel, very energized. So I'm only going to eat like this today. Like that wasn't the only thing. I also needed to put things a little more together that were more inside myself. So focus on some emotional pieces, leading more into spirituality, eventually focus on how I'm sleeping and how my body feels, how I'm moving my body, and then focus too on how I'm eating and how I'm feeding myself, which went into mindset. And all of the things collide when you're starting to try to make these changes. So all these things collide and they all impact each other in a very, very synchronistic way, that there's a synergy that's created when you start to shift small things. And so when I started realizing this about myself, I was like, wait a minute, people aren't doing this. I was like, I feel like I really needed to tap into myself and figure out, some deep rooted things that were probably maybe causing some of the ways that I was stressing out, ways that I was reacting when I was stressed, was a lot of eating things and behavior things that were just habits that I had. But habits can be broken. And when you start really having some clarity around, oh, I seem like I'm getting really stressed out. And then I go to the pantry and then I sit on the couch for a long time because that makes me feel better in the moment. And then I don't feel better like that night or the next day. I feel worse. And so it's kind of like starting to unravel. That was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of this realization.
Mm-hmm. And
Truly.
I can see how, there's so many different aspects that come together. And it's great when they can come together because a lot of the times we can feel like our lives are really fragmented,
Mhm.
and being pulled in different directions and being different people in different places with different people. It's all kind of gets distorted and confusing, and we don't know who we are, where we're going, or what's happening a lot of the time,
It's
unless we
true.
become conscious of it and have those realizations. And I find it interesting talking about the different pieces too, because quite often you hear people talking about mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit, but you also include the brain and the gut. So, how do you bring that into it all?
Yeah. So, how we think about it is your gut and your brain. So, everybody kind of has always thought like your brain controls everything. And what we're really figuring out over a series of time here, but it's like most recently in the past 20 years, is that your gut is incredibly, incredibly helpful. But they almost sometimes refer to it as the first brain. Like your gut is actually making a lot of the hormones and making a lot of the chemical reactions happen within your body that start the cascade of how you react to a stress response, or has a dictation over how much inflammation your body has, which means how much pain you may experience because of how complete your gut is, or if it's leaking at all and letting other stuff out that's kind of supposed to stay in there. So between all of the stuff that we're starting to learn and all of the information that we had, that's kind of where we will start. If you're feeling some of those physical things that just don't feel good, if you're feeling bloating or if you're feeling achy and pain, then we kind of talk about that. And then your brain is really leading, it goes together with how you're eating. So we'll talk about how to feed your brain so that you are getting really good areas in your life where you're feeling like, oh, if I eat this snack, then I feel like I know that I'm going to feel a little bit more fast in my thinking. I feel like it clears things up a little bit more. So it goes all together. Um, and I separate the brain and the mind to me. So to me, your mind is really how we're thinking about things. And that goes more into mindset. And we talk about how you're feeding yourself there too. Talking about social media, screen time in general. What are you consuming? Is it positive? Is it not positive? Like how much of an impact are you are you allowing to have on yourself and your mindset by just letting things in, and not really monitoring what the value is for you? So we hit on that. We kind of hit on all the pieces, because if you just try to make some changes, like have an awareness about, oh, I'm going to maybe try to boost up my gut health, but then you're still stuck in a mindset that's letting you say, I'm never going to be able to change the way I eat, or I've eaten like this for 20 years and there's probably no way I'm going to change it. That kind of like negative thought patterns that will start to circle around a certain behavior that you're trying to change. So we focus on that. That's where it all comes in, right? It's like sometimes we can't start to do one and have really a good shifting and change without trying to make sure we're not catching it on the back end of what's driving some of those behaviors. If that
Right.
makes sense.
Okay. Yes, yes. And it really brings in like a holistic perspective on everything too. And then there's also intuition that gets activated as well, which people sometimes associate with the gut. And so
Yeah.
what do you see as the gut intuition kind of connection there too, and how that relates to the physical sensations or disease or issues that go on in the gut? Is there a relation there?
Great question. So, um, when I've been in this evolution, like I really started as such a 3D person. I was in the hospital, I'm looking at physical illness, I'm like looking at rashes, and we're talking about the very tangible stuff that's like, what food are you eating? It like, well, the conversation that we're having right now. But when you start talking about some of the other pieces that I think have been missing from the conversation on wellness, I think this is where that comes in. So everybody knows when you have a gut feeling, you it's like it's tapping you on the shoulder. And if you don't listen to it, usually it doesn't end up being something that you said, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't listen to that." Usually you're like, "Darn it, I should have listened to that. I knew." Right? Like I knew it, but I didn't follow it or whatever. And you know, there are there's a reason that we call that our gut and our gut instinct. There's a reason that we're realizing that our intestines and our microbiome and all of this stuff is like our first brain. It's because a lot of the neurological like pathways that happen, they're also all interconnected in our gut. And so when we are speaking to that physically, that's what we can talk about. And when we talk about it energetically and spiritually, then we can talk about how I see it now that I have developed this skill that I have that is able to pick up intuitively on something where somebody might have a block there. And that's really just energy.
Mhm.
So energetically, something's going on in the spiritual place that you're like, uh-oh, something's happening. Like, yeah, and your hair might stand on end, or you might get chills, and you might think to yourself, oh, I know what that is. Like, this is something unseen, something beyond what I can physically touch, but it's still an inner knowing that gets activated there. And tapping into that brought people as far as, I can see when I'm working with clients, tapping into that and having the ability to either let someone in on use their gift to kind of give the intuition, or ask about, like, I was noticing this. And then, that intuition is the piece that kind of unlocks things for people to be able to have bigger realizations and tap into their inner knowing. So that's how I see that.
Yes, and I can see how that would reveal some of those hidden aspects or go even deeper into what's really going on, right? What was the
Yeah.
root cause, which is often the spiritual cause that goes through the mental body, emotional body, before it becomes physical and manifesting. And of course, that physical manifestation then affects us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. And
Mhm.
often when there's a disconnect, then there really is a disconnection between
Yeah.
all of the things, that help us to function, or for our bodies to function, for us to function in life, into our relationships. And so, how do we actually thrive?
Yeah. So I think that bringing some awareness to one of the pieces. So, like you just talked about this perfect continuum, which everything is touching on some level between the physical body, between your spiritual body, like the energy that might be stuck somewhere from an emotion that you felt that was very strong, from an experience that you had, which might have been in this time, or might have been just something that your soul has experienced whenever it happened. sometimes those things get trapped. Sometimes they are still stuck there, or they have developed their own little life of their own, kind of creating a space where, if, I'm going to build this wall here because it keeps us safe, making sure that thing doesn't happen again, making sure I'm not putting myself out there to get persecuted again, making sure I'm not, losing all my money again, like I did that other time. Like, all the things kind of come into play. But the point is that the energy itself is typically something that we are having no motion with, and it needs to keep flowing through. So if it's something that's stuck there, if it's something that is clearly an experience that maybe wasn't processed all the way through, it can start to have an impact in a physical way. It can start to manifest. And so what I have seen, particularly with anxiety, particularly with things like infertility, like I had experienced, physical things, pains like in the back or in your feet, things that they're like, oh, I know. When I start to think about opening my bank account, I get this pain in my stomach sometimes, like a very direct connection that we can point it to. And when you are able to get into that space where you're open to looking for the block, and when you're open to say, okay, there might be something energetically going on here, and all the things that I'm trying aren't really fixing it. They're not shifting it for me. So, like, what else could it be? That's the time when somebody like me can come and just try, do a session. And then we're able to kind of look and see what we see. And sometimes it's something that you would have never dreamed of because it's not in your conscious reality in this moment. But there are other times when experiences of your soul that has happened in the past come through. And those ties have impact in this life. And sometimes it's just like emotions that you felt because you went through something really tragic, really impactful in that time. And those feelings kind of continue and stay with you energetically. It's like an energetic signature that has remained. When I see those things, that's usually where the healing part comes in. So we're working on healing it and releasing those things so that you don't have to be stuck in that now. But that connection will start to have physical manifestations in this 3D time right here and now. And that's the piece, Jennifer, that was the most mind-blowing realization for this 3D nurse. Like, I was like, what? That was the most crazy realization. And but that's really like what I'm here to help people work through and heal.
Yeah, so you have a whole method. You call it the Synergy Thrive method,
Yeah,
right? Synergy
I
Thrive
do.
method. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
tell us about that. What is that?
Absolutely. So this method is essentially starting with the low-hanging fruit. Like, if somebody has an obvious thing that they're dealing with, like, oh my gosh, I'm having anxiety, we'll just start with that. And then we will do a session where I'm tuning in energetically, and I'm also having them I'm guiding them to a place where they can connect themselves as well. And when we start there, we have the obvious things that we know about, and we also look for the unseen as well. So we have the seen, the 3D normal stuff, like the normal stuff that we say, the anxiety, I feel like this, I have a hard time thinking, whatever it might be. And then we also get together with ourselves between us and have our sessions so that we're looking for the unseen, looking for the energetic root, looking for what else could be making this continue. And in that, we go from there and we touch on each area. So we touch on mindset, we touch on like just general, how are we eating and things like that, just because I do feel like there's still a place for that. I still feel like there's so much in the energetic world and the spiritual and all of this, but I also feel like sometimes we have to meet it and make the connection in the here and now to be in the place where we're still being really conscious about what we're consuming, whether it's food or media, and paying attention to, our gut and our brain too. So we walk through each little area, and talk about, little shifts that we can make, little tiny steps, and that's where the journey starts. And the journey kind of is different for everybody, but that's the goal, is to just have something in mind for each little area where okay, like this is my little tiny goal for like this next 2 months or something. But we
Yeah,
really start with the seen and the unseen first.
I love that. And I also love the reflection on recognizing whether what we're consuming, what we're feeding ourselves with, how nourishing that is.
Yeah.
And really recognizing, like you're talking about, being on the couch and not really making it feel any better. You had the mindset that it would, right? You thought, yeah, this is going to work, but
Yeah.
leaving the couch and not feeling any better, maybe even feeling worse or more tired, right? And so that reflection, I think, is really important, and recognizing what our habits are, what we're doing, and how it's making us feel, and what kind of impact or influence that's having. Because something that's really relevant these days is wanting to make a difference, wanting to make impact in the world. And we're in a really good overflowing kind of place, then we're better equipped to do that. But how do we go from feeling better now, feeling like we're thriving, to really making an impact out in the world?
Yeah. So I think that for every endeavor that we have, there's always going to be the moment where something jumps in our way, and it might be a familiar something that, oh, I know, this is me again. I am flailing a little bit on my schedule. I wasn't paying enough attention like usual. Kind of like I sabotaged myself again because I'm too afraid of success. Like that's the kind of stuff that is the stuff that we know maybe about, maybe not, but this is the area where just knowing that when you're going into the place where you're trying to start a business, where you're trying to have your impact, where you're trying to spread your message, that knowing that it's meant for you, and whatever blocks are coming up, because every time that we're trying to walk into our next phase of success and our next level of achievement and our next big mission of spreading our message, there's always something that's going to potentially pop in. And just knowing that you will have some way to walk through and around and dissolve that place of blocking, because this is meant for you. So we're all out here doing our best, whether it's being just a mom, not just a mom, but even if you're not a person who's doing business, but you are running your family
Mm.
and you're thinking, I want to be the best mom I can be. I want to have a great impact for my kids. Like that is, even in those simple things where you're not adding on business processes and all that stuff, even those, there's always a challenge that might come in. And just knowing that if that's what's meant for you, that stepping into that version of yourself, believing in yourself, and then reaching out for that guide, who might be someone like Jennifer, might be someone like me, to help you get through the block and say, okay, I know that this is like what I'm meant to do. And it feels so much better when you feel like you have a little bit of a path and someone maybe holding your hand along the way.
Mhm.
And I think for me, thriving is simply feeling good and knowing that you're like doing what you're supposed to be doing, because that is an internal feeling that just shines out. And so
Yeah,
that's really what that's about.
amazing. Thank you. And it's often something that's just so natural that we can miss it, because we don't think it's anything, but it can have such a profound effect on somebody else. Do you remember when that moment was for you, when you knew that this is the kind of work that's really your life's work, your passion? This is what helps you thrive in your life. Do you remember how that came together for you?
Yeah, well, I think it's been a layering for me. So anytime that I feel like I'm able to have significant impact for someone, and I just know that leaving, and even after just a simple conversation or sitting with someone in person at the hospital, like that was kind of where it started. I was like, this is important. People need people to show compassion and to just know that they feel heard. And then it layered in so much more deeply when I started doing this intuitive work. And within in our sessions that I started practicing with, there were a lot of moments where what was being asked in that time, what was being brought up, required healing, required deep shifting. And as soon as I really allowed my gift to come through like it needed to, I understood on a level that was so much deeper than I ever knew about before,
Yeah.
how intense and how much of a grand scale shift that you can make and help be a part of for someone. And so for that, it was really evident to me in that time that this was really what was meant for my path as a person who helps other people heal.
Yeah. And the people in particular seem to be women and mothers in
Mhm.
particular. Is that who you feel that you attract or you best serve? Or how do you know it's like them that you're meant to serve?
Yeah, it ends up being who comes to me, honestly. So, um, and the other piece of this is that through all my time in the hospital, I've always worked with children. So my understanding from that was really that to make any impact happen for the child, yes, obviously I always wanted to connect with the child, but really the connection with their parents was the key to making any lasting changes. And it all kind of unfolded within me, within this aspect, to understand that, essentially it's moms who are just looking to like shine their light, be the best they can be, whether that means they're having their business or just being the best mom and sister or whoever they were looking to be. But like that is truly the place where I'm trying to set the generational shift for the next generation. We have a bunch of moms out there who are healing, who are breaking cycles, who are breaking down generational trauma and doing all of this from an energetic place and from a health place and a wellness place. It only is an example, like to these kids who are looking at their mommy saying, wow, like that's what mommy does. And so I can do that. And it just sets the bar at a different level. So moms and women is it's really where my heart is. So yeah.
That's where your heart is. Amazing. And how can these women and moms connect with you, Kelly?
Well, I'm Synergy Thrive on pretty much all the things. So Instagram and Facebook, Synergy Thrive. And I do have a podcast, which is the Synergy Thrive podcast as well.
Fantastic. And we'll
Yeah,
have those links in the show notes, of course. And you have something special for everyone tuning in as well. Do you want to tell us about that?
I do. So we have a free download. If anyone is looking to just kind of get a taste of the type of work that I do, I have a free meditation. There's a little bit of breath work incorporated there. And that's a free download for anybody who would like to try that. And you'll definitely get a taste of the type of healing method that I will use. So that is incorporated there as well.
Yes, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's so generous of you. And we'll have easy links for people in the show notes as well. So you can just tap into those. And I would love to hear, Kelly, if there's anything else that you wanted to share with us, give us some parting words of wisdom.
Sure. Well, one other thing I did want to mention is that if you're curious about my healing style or how I, do things, we do have free healing circles as well. And so that's just free. Anybody can join us and it's small groups. So that's pretty cool. And I think, at the end of this, the biggest thing that I want to say is that we're all on a journey, but we are all here for a mission and for a purpose. And we are all meant to get out there and do what we're meant to do here. So if anybody is out there thinking, I feel called to do something and I feel like I don't know how to get on that path, or I'm waiting to see a sign or something like that. Like I know we've all kind of had those moments. You can do it, and like don't let anything block you. And if you feel like you're stuck, that's the kind of work that we do. So
Yes.
Everybody is meant for something.
So I'm calling on everyone who's tuning in right now to check in with us and let us know if you're feeling that, if you're feeling a calling, if you feel drawn to work with certain types of people or in a certain way, or what kind of difference you're wanting to make, or that you're already making. We'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment for us. And if you like the video, then make sure you give us a thumbs up so it can be shared and reach more people who can hear all about Kelly and her Synergy Thrive method, because we want everybody to thrive. Everybody deserves to thrive. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you for sharing your message and your beautiful presence.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you for all of you that have been watching today. We'll see you again next week on Awaken and Ascend.